Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai
Guru.
Welcome to this minute 80 of Awake Minute by Minute podcast. This is the penultimate episode of our Awake Minute by Minute podcast series. So we hope you have enjoyed, and we hope you're enjoying so far. We do have a very exciting minute. Really, my opinion on this, guys, I don't know how you feel about it, but this minute and the next minute it's my favorite bit in the whole documentary. I don't know if it is for you guys to see nodding heads, but for me, the combination, the build up to, the content throughout the whole documentary, but the final delivery, the last couple of minutes, I think they nailed it personally. I think the music that they have in it is a really ideal choice, and we'll get into that in this minute. But they have an exceptionally thought and soul-provoking statement here by Krishna Das. And Krishna Das was with us throughout the documentary, but they really finished the documentary off with a quote that he gave, and we'll get into it in this minute. But he does talk, he reveals actually that his guru, when he died, his guru died, he was speaking with an Indian saint, and he was asking this Indian saint, how can I get closer to my guru now that he passed, obviously? And the response was exceptional, which I'll pause for dramatic effect. We'll talk about that later. But first, we can talk about the guru of Krishna Das. Now, Krishna Das's guru was
first we must talk about Stan.
Oh, sorry, so sorry.
Podcast listeners won't see there's a fourth mysterious character.
I got so excited. We were chatting to Stan before the minute started. Stan, the ritual, of course, is to introduce our great guest today. Stanley, welcome to the minute.
Cut. Let's start this all again. No, just kidding.
welcome, Stanley, to the minute. You're very welcome, and there's going to be a divine synchronous moment, of course, on this podcast that you can talk about later on. But welcome to this minute. Do you want to introduce yourself to the folks? Where are you from?
Sure, thanks, Chris. So I'm from London right now, but originally actually hailed from Kenya, so that's in East Africa. And yeah, my path to let's say spiritual life has had many ups and downs. There's been a lot of suffering, but also the greatest of joys. And at this moment, I don't really like subscribing to, let's say, labels or roles, just because when I look at the breadth of human experience, I realize that, everyone is an example of your potential, right? So for me, right now, I'd say maybe I'm a spiritual engineer in terms of, it's only very recently that I've come to realize, or experientially, that I'm a soul within this body and this mind. And so what I'd say I'm trying to do is to kind of like structure my mind and my body so that I can connect to source as easily as possible. And out of all my explorations of various faiths and religions, I'd say that, and philosophies, I'd say finding SRF, the Self-Realization Fellowship, has been the greatest blessing and miracle in my life, because, that's the path is laid out in front of you of exactly what you need to do to become whole again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You should have been, I guess, in the last minute, we were talking about guruness, what it means to have a guru, and that would have been a great response to that.
Yeah.
I'd ask, you were from Kenya. When did you move over to London? Were you born there?
Yeah, I was born in Kenya, and I moved to the UK. I wasn't in London. I was actually in Scotland first. And that was a shock to the system, going from the exotic and wonderful weather of Kenya to the interesting weather of Scotland.
I'm Northern Irish, so it's very similar environments. I feel your pain.
Yeah, so I moved in 2002, and I've been in the UK ever since. Moved to various cities, Some people seem to think I have an American accent. I guess that's what you get when you mix up, you know, living in Scotland, Norwich, Coventry, London, listening to American films, etc. So you get, but yeah, it's been a good journey so far.
Do you know what the scene is like for SRF in Kenya? Is there any, are there any communities over there?
So I don't actually know much about the SRF presence there, but I did see, I think we're going to be going through some photos later for different SRF centers, and I think they're definitely, I saw Kenya there, so I'm very happy, pleased to know that yeah, Kenya is being influenced by this wonderful energy and this wonderful, you know, opportunity to self-realize. Yeah.
Awesome. And we usually ask about the Genesis story, about, you know, how you first came across the autobiography of a yogi. Do you care to share anything with us?
Sure. So that was, I'd say I've lived a miraculous life. And, you know, even finding out about the autobiography was one of the greatest miracles of my life. I was actually, I remember just having dropped out of university, and I was on Google searching for, can I still be successful without having a university degree? You know, what famous people have there been, successful people who, you know, didn't go to university? Then I ended up on an article on Business Insider, right, on the internet, which was talking about Steve Jobs and how when he passed away, he gave a copy of this mysterious book to everyone who attended his funeral. And that struck me as being very strange, because I was like, what is this book? Why would you make sure that everyone who came to, you know, pay respects to your life had this book? So I found out that the book was actually the autobiography of a yogi. And I purchased it because I was like, hey, Steve Jobs is one of the most transformative people in terms of technology, which is a field I'm super interested in. And so got the copy, I started reading, and I could not believe what I was discovering, right? It was like all my preconceptions about how the universe and life worked were just being completely swept away. And, you know, before then, my mindset had been very kind of like, let's say, rational or scientific, and I had a certain model of the world. But reading the autobiography showed me that that model was so incorrect, right? That there was just so much more to life that I hadn't considered. And yeah, ever since then, you know, the spark got lit within my soul, and I've been exploring ever since, awakening ever since, and can't wait to see what the future brings.
Nice. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing. I share a similar path through Steve Jobs as well. I'm sure many people do. So the great soul has guided many people to another great soul in Guruji. So great. Thank you very much for that, Stanley. Sorry for missing you out again. I was so set on talking about the minute. So we do have some interesting topics to discuss here on this minute, and one is, as I was about to say, was the Guru of Krishna Das, who is Neem Karoli Baba Maharaj-ji. Now, this is an interesting character. I actually hadn't heard about this Indian saint, I suppose you would say. So I did a little bit of Googling, and you know, there's a lot of really interesting material online about him. So I would really encourage anybody who hasn't read anything about him to do so. You'll find some interesting websites talking about some stories of people who have met him. He was famous not to really have strict devotees as such, so he didn't claim that he was a guru or anything of that sort. But we can delve into some stories that people have shared about him, and we'll see that he truly was a great guru in his own right, bringing people toward the path of God. Mike, do you have something to jump in on?
First, I wanted to mention that it's interesting how often Steve Jobs comes up in the origin story of devotees, especially these days, especially younger people, because I remember 10, 15 years ago, it was autobiography of a yogi, a friend, but now it's oftentimes through, I don't know, social media. You read an internet article about Steve Jobs, and there you go. So kudos to him as well. And I just want to bring a story full circle here, because we are going to talk about Neem Karoli Baba now. And he was actually the reason why Steve Jobs originally went to India. He was looking for him. He hadn't known that he had passed away already. And then he got sick in India. And then famously, at the family that nurtured him back to health, he saw a copy of the autobiography of a yogi. And that's how he got into Yogananda. So it's all connected.
Wow, it's a really good bit of info there. Like, Priyank.
Yeah, great bit of info. Does that also mean that seeing as SRF devotees owe so much to Mr. Jobs, does that mean that all SRF devotees therefore now should have only Apple phones and Apple MacBooks? And how many of us are in that category? I'm Android, unfortunately, so I'm not being a very good devotee.
We've got the same phone, right? So
the other thing,
after I moved to the US, I moved back to Apple. I got Android changed many times here.
Sell out. Sell out. The reason I say they sell out is because Mike and I always debated often about which one's the more superior. And I thought we both agreed that we're going to stick to Android, but now he's gone to California and he's made the full circle.
Gone to Silicon Valley and bought into that.
What do you have, Stan?
I've gone Android.
3-1, Mike, 3-1. Although Mike's the only devotee, that would mean.
sorry, Steve Jobs. Forgive us, yeah.
I was going to say about Neem Karoli Baba. I think his path is one principally is devotees follow of bhakti, of devotion. Is that correct? I think that's what I read about him.
Well, he passed in 1973, and the sites that I found. Clearly, you guys know a little bit more about him than I did, but touched the lives of millions of people. And there's a great piece, Frank, maybe you could play. There's a video. Anybody who's not watching the YouTube channel that we have can listen to the audio clip of a professor talking about his interaction with this great saint. And how he was maybe skeptical and how he kind of came about to different thinking, similar to what you were saying, Stanley, maybe about yourself. So this interaction was great, and I thought we'd share it here.
Watching and
so he said, come, this, sit down. Then he said, you were out under the stars, thinking of your mother last night, which, I mean, a Harvard professor, knowing, having been in cognitive research and stuff like that, nothing made me ready for that.
You were remembering your mother. She died of spleen.
Yeah.
And that was.
So that's a story of a chap who was sitting on his own, with his own thoughts, and somehow or another was able then to go into a conversation, and his mind was read, and he was able to be moved so much by this great saint that he became a spiritual convert to the path of yoga. And it's something like little stories like this, and you hear people that, a Harvard professor saying openly how much it changed his life is obviously phenomenal. But it is just one story, I'm sure, of many that would be out there about this great saint. Stanley.
Yeah, I'd say that person you've identified of people are coming across information that is so contradictory to what they're used to is really what's needed for people to snap out of, this kind of like conception that they are their actual mind, right? Because I think especially in maybe like Western society, we are taught to use our minds in such a way that they're like problem-solving tools, right? And so if you only ever use your mind as a problem-solving tool, everything in life kind of like seems to be a problem, or you're like, oh, there must be a solution. Let me break it down into different parts, solve each of the parts, and then I'll get a solution, right? And because of that, you don't actually get to explore the other ways your mind can work. And so when you come across someone who isn't stuck in the same way of, let's say, using their mind or identifying with their mind, right? And they give you this information, for example, they're able to read your mind, or they are able to, say things to you in a very specific way that just triggers something within you. And you suddenly have a moment where you're like, oh, I'm actually not like the thoughts that are within my head, right? I think that is always the beginning of any true like awakening. Just because, in this world, like we have no option but to use our mind. And so it's like being in a car and you're driving the car and you're just so used to driving the car in a certain way that it feels like a part of your entire body. But yeah, that's kind of like the mass illusion that the majority of human beings are under. And so yeah, I do really identify with what Ram Dass experienced. And if you can only just get that on a huge scale, wake everyone up, that would be amazing.
Well, yeah, again, we talked a little bit about that in the last minute, like why do people have gurus and others don't? Why is it maybe a great sense have come in the past and everybody didn't flock to them? Why is that? And I suppose the answer is quite simple. Like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So it's really this student-driven relationship with gurus is what is really really important. That it's up to the student to really seek and then get close to and stick with the guru. The gurus will come whenever the seekers are there in number. And so this was a great scent, and as many great scents did, they poked and prodded the potential devotees and followers' mind to give them little shakes to wake them up. And we saw with stories that Guruji shared about Sri Yukteswar when he was meditating. You're not concentrating, you're thinking about other things. You're planning ahead, you're planning your future. There was a story, I think, when Guruji was seeing the multiple the SRF organization well ahead of time, and Sri Yukteswar was like, hey, stop that, concentrate. So clearly there's that ability of these great saints to do that. Priyank, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, with Neem Karoli Baba, I just wanted to relate a story about him. Did we discuss like how he got his name?
No, we did not.
Because his actual, before his name was actually Lakshman Das. But Neem Karoli, I'll tell you how he, I think Krishna Das actually, I went to the last Krishna Das concert I went to with Vatsal. San, we watched him, and then he started talking about Neem Karoli Baba, his guru, and he said, so basically Lakshman Das, which is his previous name, he was on the train, and he didn't have a ticket, and the conductor came round, and obviously asked him for his ticket, and he said, I don't have one, but I'm a sadhu, I'm a mystic, I don't have any possessions. And then the conductor was like, that's it, we've got to get off the train. So the conductor asked the train driver to stop the train in the middle of nowhere, literally in the middle of nowhere, and said, off you get. And then Neem Karoli Baba was like, you sure you want to do this? Like, yeah. So they got off, he got off, and then the train wouldn't start. And then they're like, what's going on? And then they found discussed with him, and he's like, it's not going to start without me on it. And then so it wouldn't start. They tried everything, it wouldn't start. And then they're like, okay, fine, let's put this theory to the test. And he's like, if it, you know, on two conditions, I'll get on the train. One, your railway company promises to build a train station here, because the local village, Neem Karoli, which is 3 miles away, doesn't have any means to civilization, and this train tracks passes straight through near the village. So you build a train station here, and then so they say, okay, fine, crazy guy, and then B, you agree to treat sadhus better, i.e. Saints better. And okay, fine. So and then he got on, and then it actually started. The train started, and then the driver was like, "No, I can't. You know, this is insane. I've got to go see this person." So the driver then goes to see him. He's like, "I'm not going anywhere until you bless me." So then he had to bless the train driver, and then the train driver went, and then the train moved, and then they put a train station at Neem Karoli, and probably still there.
Wow,
That's so
that is
cool.
an amazing story. Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's such a great story. And what great blackmail to be able to have. I wish I had that ability when I got €108 fine for not having a bus ticket on the Italian Rome buses.
Oh no!
Myself and my wife, yeah, you know, because I should have said, "Hey, do you really want to do this?" Went on that route. If only, yeah, if only. No, good stuff. That's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing. So we can go to what Krishna did indeed say and reveal what he said. Obviously, the watchers of the Awake in Minute movie will already know, but it's a great thought and soul-provoking statement. And it was from this Indian saint who he had asked the question about how could he get closer to his guru, and the response was that the saint looked at him as if he was crazy, and then said, "Your guru is what's looking out of your eyes right now." And then Krishna said, very cool and calmly, he says, "So get with that for a while." And I thought that was a very, very, very funny, very great response to that. And for me, it is such an impactful and powerful statement. So that's your guru. Your guru is looking through your eyes right now. What did it mean to you guys? I'll leave this open to the forum, but Mike, I see you have a comment, so I'll come to you first for comment. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, guys. I think as a spiritual seeker, this is very comforting, because all we want is to be close to our guru, right? And then when somebody tells us, somebody who has like more of like a spiritual vision, he goes like, your guru is like right there. I can see him, I can see you, and when I see you, I see your guru with you, which is fantastic. I can share a little episode that happened to my brother maybe like 10-15 years ago, where we were all at was it a Reiki healer or some kind of healer that we went to, and she was saying she was giving my brother a massage and said she was trying to go into his spine. And when she did that, she said she was aware of Yogananda, but she was not a follower. But she basically tried it, and then she said she saw an image of Yogananda saying that she should not perform anything on him. And that was kind of, I felt like that seemed like a similar thing, where you kind of feel like your guru is always there with you in a spiritual sense.
Looking out for you, for sure. Stanley.
Yeah, for me, that's very impactful, because I'd say even looking back at this year of my life, there've been times where I've been worrying and afraid and, you know, just anxious about what's going to happen in my future, etc. And maybe that's been a pattern through, let's say, majority of my life. But then when I look back, I see that in every single situation, there was like this, like, let's say, shield of protection, right? That was with me all that time, right? Even when I didn't know that I needed it, or that I was lost, or that I was in trouble, like, I think that protection, that field of energy has definitely been the Guru, right? Within my soul, within every fiber of my being, right? Even in the things I say, even in the intuitions that come into my mind, right? Sometimes I don't, because I have a very, let's say, unique, well, not unique, but very silent mind. And sometimes I'll just get these kind of like inklings of intuition, right? And I always wonder where they come from, right? But with every single one, when I actually meditate upon them and reflect upon them, it's always like a lesson, right? That actually makes my life not just more peaceful, more joyous, but definitely more connected to the divine. So I do believe that the Guru is within me right now, right? People sometimes may describe that as like your higher self, etc. But I think that promise that Guruji gave us, that he'll always be here, right? That we don't need to look anywhere else. That promise is still alive and well right now.
Priyank. Oh,
Are you muted?
Very, very well said, Stan. I also, the delivery of that line that Krishna does is absolutely spot on, isn't it? I feel like I want to learn the exact way he delivered it, and then hopefully one day someone can ask me that question, and then I hadn't seen that film, and then I'm going to say it exactly in the same way that he, like the same diction and the same delivery, and then I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that's from the Awake film, and then get them to watch the Awake film as well. But it was such
I couldn't possibly dream of being cool enough for that. Yeah.
such a poignant way to end the film, really, isn't it? What a great snippet.
Yeah. For me, whenever the line came, kind of hit me like a train, and I thought, okay, he said sit with that for a while, right? So what he means is, really meditate on that. And we can't do that, right? We can't take statements, we can't take pieces of information, knowledge, just meditate on it. And that is a statement you really can meditate on, in my opinion. There's so much to unpack there. One thing that I came to mind for me whenever he said the Guru's what's looking through your eyes right now is the undying support and love and that relationship. Priyank, you've talked about it all the way through this podcast, is the relationship with the Guru, and that no matter what goes on in your life, you have that commitment with the Guru. It's that commitment, that everlasting commitment, that it's the love and kindness and forgiveness that you will stray, you will constantly stray, but he's there like the shepherd with the flock. The sheep will constantly stray. It's like, okay, come back. Just that overwhelming sense of gratitude and gratefulness, like that kind of washed over me when I heard it. I was like, wow, such a great statement. And we have to follow that up a really, really impactful choice of song. And we can talk a little bit about the music that we hear in this minute. And the songs combined with, again, a really powerful set of pictures and videos of combination of at least 14. I counted 14. I don't know about you guys, different places. Over the next, we're kind of cheating here, but it's over the next minute as well, where there's Nairobi is in there, Nairobi, Kenya, places all over the world, Barcelona, Hong Kong, Italy's got a few places in there, and there's just scenes of devotion of people in places of worship, people doing yoga on the streets in New York. It's timed very, very well as well with the music, and I thought they did this brilliantly. Really credit to them for really bringing about a very evocative conclusion, really, to this documentary. So I really thought it was amazing. But this artist, then maybe we could talk a little bit about the artist. Mike, would you be kind enough to kick us off on the artists themselves?
Sure. I mean, when you're as old as I am, then you would know Alanis Morisette very well because she was very famous in the 90s. She's Canadian, and I think she sold like 75 million records or something. So she was really a big deal in the 90s. The reason why they chose her song to be in Awake is interesting because later on she got more interested into spirituality. And I love it when like famous people get into spirituality and then they want to share it, right? They want it to be reflected in their work. They want to pass it on. They want to play a positive role. And that's what she's doing. And her more recent is like in the 2010s. She released an album, and the song that they put in there is called Still, and it's has a more of a spiritual kind of lyrics, which is I think why they chose it. The combination of a big famous musician and the spirituality. And I read a little bit about how she got into spirituality. She did an interview on Oprah like 5 years ago or something. And I want to read a little excerpt from her trip to India, what she said. And it said, that trip was Alanis' breakthrough moment. One of the biggest moments of connection was in India, for sure. It was the first time that I got really, really, really quiet, because I had always been in semi-chaotic environments, she says. I think because spirituality is such a through line to the entire culture, it was very validating for me, because I've always thought of myself as a little God girl, but I would always hide it or joke about it, just keep it to myself, basically. But in India, that's just very normal. And so that way she kind of explained that she had this spiritual spark in her, but she didn't know how to express it. And she said her environments weren't very conducive to expressing it. Yeah, Priyank?
Very, very beautiful. Personally, I've got the link with her. I wasn't that into music back in those days, but I was into TV.
Music full stop, or her music?
Music
full stop.
Any music, yeah.
Oh.
Still not really that much into music, to be honest. But anyway, but I used to like screenplay for things, music and soundtracks and stuff. And embarrassing story, but I've got two older sisters, and they used to watch Dawson's Creek. And I got very much into Dawson's Creek, like very into it, more than they were at the end. and this Alanis is that she's got multiple soundtracks in Dawson's Creek, and also the title sequence of Dawson's Creek was by Alanis. I Don't Want to Wait for Our Lives to Be Over, and but I didn't know her name. I just, I like this song, right? So I'm not into music, so I don't go and buy albums. And then when I watched the Awake film, like I know this voice. It's the moving voice. I know it. And then I looked it up, and it was this lady, and I thought, oh, this is so cool. And also similarly, I went to watch a theatre, or I think. An opera by Gandhi, Satyagraha, I think the opera was, and the composer for all the pieces was an artist called Phil Glass, I think, and then when the music was playing for the opera, I was like, this is very familiar, and then I got home and I researched him, and I looked in the Awake book, and he's in the classical music tracks that they use in this film. The majority of them are by Phil Glass. So I was like, wow, it's so cool how, like, even if you're not into music, like these things just kind of come and connect, and then you can feel them without even knowledge. But then if you scratch beneath the surface, you can see how it's all interwoven for your life. It's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's something I was thinking about with Krishna Das, that if you say you've been to concerts, that's such a great way to spend your time, because his music is really powerful as well. And how much kind of trash is there in music these days, for sure. one thing that I thought about was like there's like God rap. Have you seen? There's a lot of God rap coming on more and more these days, which I thought was quite interesting. Something that's quite cool, but still, I'm sure this is a much better choice given the audience. Greg, do you want to continue reading on that story?
Yeah, sure. I can think of countless times when I walked around my city thinking, I am just a single little drop, and having no connection to this big juicy ocean just a block away. Painful moments. That fundamental kind of disconnection creates everything from loneliness to deep depression to a lack of appreciation for humanity. And I believe that it is because of a severing of our attachment connection, which is our earliest development stage, our rooting in this lifetime. Just like couples will go to therapy when they can't find their connection with each other, perhaps we need much the same support to heal the spiritual abuse that led us to forget the deepest truths of our existence and connection with God. Alanis is certainly quite a deep thinker, isn't she?
Deep thinker, yeah. I just think like I had quite a strong, sharp change from one life to another, where one year I was going out, drinking with my friends and going to bars and everything, clubs. And the next year I wasn't. I was stuck in my room meditating, and my friends were kind of thinking, geez, where is he gone? They were messaging me saying, are you coming out? I would reply, no, sorry, busy, went on for months. And eventually I was telling them, got really, into yoga. And I think they thought I was having a mental breakdown, like really. And they're great friends. They're probably very concerned about me. But to my mind, I was having a mental breakthrough. And yes, I kind of relate to what is being shared here. The severance, the destruction of a world and the creation of a new one. I think probably we go through that in this life or another when we're making that transition. Stanley, you want to jump in?
Yeah, it's actually interesting what you say about your friends being concerned about like your well-being, because I remember listening on one of the podcast episodes where Ramdas was talking about how the major difference between, let's say, the West and the East is, like, for example, in India, when people, have these breaks from how they normally operate, right? Usually when they're going through some sort of spiritual awakening, the community has a framework, right, where they understand that this is a part of some people's lives, right? Whereas here in the West, we kind of like immediately jump to thinking, oh, there must be something maybe mentally wrong with this person, right? And so, the standard practice has been to kind of like institutionalize these people, right? And it's a shame, because probably a lot of the people who've been very, maybe prolific or famous in one shape or another, or even a lot of artists probably, right, went through these awakenings. Because one thing I've seen with artists, it actually connects you to something much deeper than just your normal rational walking mind. And I think that's the great thing about, even for example, like doing this podcast and helping to share this knowledge that there are other ways of actually being and existing in this world, so that people have a more, like, let's say, wholesome understanding of the human reality. But yeah, even there were times I'll say where I thought I was going crazy, right? Because you look at everyone, they're like, wait, don't you feel what I feel? Don't you see what I see? Like, how can you, like, I remember, for example, when I finished reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it was the first time where I felt like high from reading a book. And I was like, wait, what is going on here, right? And it's like you immediately want to go and tell everyone, hey, look what just happened to me, etc., etc. But because it's like so new to you, it's very hard to even put it into understandable, let's say, like words and so that people can understand. So yeah, I think, that's where that period of, a bit of having some isolation to actually integrate the things that are happening to you is really important. So I'm really glad you mentioned that. Definitely.
One mistake I made, probably more on one occasion, was not to share too much with people especially when you're on the beginning of the spiritual path. And that's talked about by Guruji. Let the seed grow into a sturdy tree before, you might look to test it and push and look abroad, especially when others inevitably will do that to try to shake your belief. The roots must grow deep before you even try to dare to shake them. So Priyanka, sorry, you wanted to jump in?
Before because often people try and their natural reaction usually to things they don't understand is to like bring what you share to their level of way of looking at the world. So then that would mean that if you're talking about lofty spiritual things, then they would then just try and bring it down to something that's mundane, or that you're being insane or crazy. So that's why part of the reason why it's inadvisable to go down that path unless you really
reductionist view.
Yeah, that's right. Are we gonna Chris talk about some of the lyrics from this song?
We are, I was just about to say there's I don't know how there's many verses in this, but the one that really comes first and the one that we could talk about, it says, I am the harm which you inflict. I am your brilliance and frustration. I'm the nuclear bombs if they're to hit. I'm your immaturity and your indignance. And that's the first paragraph. And those words overlap, lots of scenes, and the two very impactful ones for me. The one that stands out head and shoulders, and then some of the rest is Guruji, and Guruji's in there. And you see his eyes. I don't know what the word would be to describe his eyes. Maybe somebody can help me out, but glassy, watery, mystical eyes that are just piercing your soul and just kind of, is willing you to and they're looking with very loving eyes. That's a very famous picture, isn't it? I can't remember exactly what from. Maybe Priyank, you can tell us a little bit more about that. No, okay. I saw you nodding and thought maybe you could. You've got some great knowledge to share. And then the next image is the nuclear bomb. Of course, we've talked about that before. But really, it was really impactful for me. Pardon the pun. Whenever they paired all that together, and the nuclear bomb, if they're to hit. When we talk about this concept of God, like you might say, God is behind every single nuclear atom. The consciousness and the life force behind everything, and then what do we do with it? We use it to explode things. So it compels you to think about mankind, the purpose of being here on planet Earth. What is our purpose ultimately? To connect with God. So it's such a powerful, compacted few seconds that they have here for this minute. But Priyank, did you want to jump in on this as well?
Yeah. So the words are spoken like I am this and I am that. So and they interplay like Guruji's eyes on this minute. So it's as if the I that she's speaking about is the observer, who is God or God and Gurus, right? So and then the key is in the chorus, which is and I love you still, and I love you still. So it's kind of God saying that forgives all your transgressions, or humanity's transgressions, because we see all the insane things that humanity does, like the nuclear bombs and things like that.
Yeah. So she's channeling some guru-ness that we talked about in the previous minute. And they've teed it up really nicely, haven't they? It just fits perfectly with what Krishna has said. They must have thought they struck a gold mine with the two quotes, really, with Krishna Das saying, your guru is what's looking through your eyes right now, to these beautiful lyrics. I am the harm which you inflict, I'm the brilliance and your frustration. So the Guru's living through all of this with us. Very, very beautiful. Priyank.
Yeah, so one of the glassy images that you mentioned, that it was actually the one where he's the last smile. So just before the Mahasamadhi. But I don't know, there's one picture where he's actually looking up at the camera. That's the one where I don't know where that one's from, but again, it's quite a famous picture.
Is that the Sri Ekhteshwar's Mahasamadhi picture? You think the second one that you're talking about there? Because that wouldn't be the
oh
glassy eyed one.
yeah, like because when he's in India, you mean, when where Richard Wright takes the picture from up above. Yeah, it could be that.
It's a video shot, yeah.
Could be that, yeah.
But this one certainly isn't that one. This one's maybe that last you said last smile.
Yes.
Picture, but it's a beautiful, beautiful shot of Guruji's very, very loving, kind eyes. I know we've talked about Guruji's picture and what it might, the emotions or what it might bring out in his. Like, and I've shared it a couple of times that sometimes you're looking at it and it could be a little bit more stern than others. If you need to get some motivation on to do your sadhanas and things, and very loving, kind in others. But so we have lots of pictures here. A dozen and more images of different sites all over the world. Priyank, you wanted to discuss which center was the best in the world.
Yeah.
Very, very subjective. Could there be one best one?
Definitely is.
There's maybe an obvious one.
You can't say any of the ones in LA. So Mike,
Okay.
I think Mike, you've probably been to more than I've been to, probably about 15 around the world, as far-flung places like Singapore and some European countries. But I really like the Italy ones. They had quite a unique feeling. I don't know why. And this Torino, they got one of the temples. Is the Torino temple or the center, and they've got a picture of that in there. But I do really like the Italy temples for some reason. I went to the SRF Centre in Singapore, and it's like next to this really loud and chaotic South Indian temple. So like you're trying to do all this meditation and there's like insane bells and sounds going on like 20 meters away. So it's like a real test of endurance to see whether or not you can practice the technique of closing off your sense telephones, as Guruji calls them, and the ear telephone being the most prominent one. You need to shut off in that one. But I really like, it's funny that there's only 10-15 centers that are shown, and Nairobi, Kenya is shown. It's a really lovely altar, a little small altar, and there's 5 very sweet looking devotees, and it's really cool that we've got Stan here. So hopefully Stan, one day if you go back to Nairobi, you can actually go to that center and send us a selfie and we'll put it on one of our social media feeds.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
But Mike, what's the best center in the world, in your humble opinion?
Lake Shrine.
No, you can't pick any LA ones. We said you can't pick any LA.
Which is the second best?
I feel like it's really subjective. It's really about what you feel, where you have maybe a memory of a good meditation, or you feel devotion particularly strong. I agree a bit with Priyank that like I've been to the centers in some in Italy and some in Spain, and I felt like devotion. I feel like there's generally a tendency, the more you're in the south, the more you feel devotion a bit stronger. Obviously in India, it felt like the first time I went to centers in India, in the beginning, the first thing I remember was discomfort. It was like my body hurt. But then after a while, like you kind of get into it, and so I don't think there's definitely, I don't want to say anything about better or worse. Obviously the Munich Center, I've been there many times. But for me, I would say the London Center is like the one where I spend most of my time meditating, and that one grew really close to my heart. And of the images that I saw in the movie, there was one thing that stuck out to me was a bit Helsinki, because I've been there many times because I worked near there in Tallinn. I've actually never gone to their center. I wasn't even aware there was one. So that was maybe a missed opportunity.
Mike, we're paid for our, we're paid to be subjective, share our subjective experiences. So you have to say one center.
I did say London.
Okay. I thought you did it in a very PC way. Yeah, I spend the most time in London.
No, that one grew closer to my heart from the centers. So
you had your biggest acting breaks, didn't you?
Yes,
lots of
famously
you were casted. Yeah, you were casted for Mary.
Luckily, they're not recorded on video.
Mike, for those who aren't from the London Centre, Mike has played many roles as Mukunda in young adult plays. I think the one we did was one we did was the two penniless boys in London, I think, which is probably from Guruji stories, two penniless boys in Vrindavan. And the other one we did one more, but I've forgotten which one was. That one was, but yeah, we've done two good ones, and then we're gonna do one more in a few weeks, and that's gonna be the cauliflower robbery. By the time this episode gets published, I think that play would have been done.
Oh, that's great. Well, anybody in London?
Oh no, it won't. It won't. Sorry, no, it won't. So please head over to the London Centre on the 17th of December.
17th. There you go. Nice. Yeah, I've only got experience really with the London Centre, but it was like when I was in London, like an anchor for me. It was such a retreat, I think, from the madness of London as well. I imagine that's what some of these big, the centres are, and some of the big cities for sure are for many people. This sanctuary of peace and tranquility for people. But certainly the energy, when you go there. You can, depending on what's going on in the world, you can really feel the intensity of the energy from those people around you. So London Centre, I think usually there was about 40 people in London Centre on Sundays, and maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays. But we do see like different pictures. There's one of Joshua Tree in California of a couple of kids out meditating, arms, on their laps, hands on their laps, and hands facing upward in meditation. It's great to see like young people in meditation. So I wonder, maybe around the world, are there very young devotees? Because maybe not so much in London Centre. I know your seeking of spirituality, certainly in the Western world, usually comes in slightly later times, but is it that way, do you think, in parts of India? Brent, can you share anything? Like, are they maybe young devotees in the YSS more so than in the Western world?
Can't speak for YSS, but I can speak for my neighbors and my family. No, I'd say the ratio is as is with the West. Seems to be a good match.
Yeah, chasing butterflies and getting dirty in the fields. Yeah, don't blame them.
But I must say but that doesn't mean that they're not more religious. They're certainly more religious, but that doesn't mean that they're doing it out of their own volition and they're actually approaching the spiritual path. They're just doing it because the parents are, very ritualistic, or perform their puja every single morning and things like that. So they are forced to sit. I used to be forced to sit for those. Used to hate it.
I think I've shared this story before, but brought up Protestant, and I said to my minister one day that, hey, all we talk about is football, and I'm not even into football, so I'm leaving. And he thought I was joking, and my mum then thought I was joking. She thought I was going to become a Roman Catholic, and I said, no, I'm not doing anything. But I'd say on that day, my spiritual journey started. To be fair, in many ways, each to their own.
Isn't that the day like that you dramatically stormed out of the house and walked with a suitcase up the road and then realized you're only 4 years old or something? I had to turn back.
Yeah, it's like 7 or 8 years old. It's probably around the same time.
You took football in one hand and a briefcase in the other.
I'm off to find Guruji. Yeah, I live in the countryside in Ireland, so it's a long way to go to civilization up there. So there are many scenes, beautiful, heartwarming scenes, very well coordinated with the music. One of my favorite little parts is when the music really hits and drops at the beginning. They show people raising their hands in New York, and they're doing some yoga asana, some practice there, and there's just a throngs of people in New York meditating.
I think that's the World Yoga Day. World Yoga Day.
Yeah. They showed it earlier in this in the Awake podcast.
They recycled quite a lot of scenes in this because if you think about it, they had like 100 different shots in the space of like 30 seconds. So they just like used any material they could get, I think.
Yeah, but it works. You can see. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I think it's like a continuation of, when they say when you die, you kind of your whole life
flashes before your eyes, right? Are you comparing the end, watching the end of the end sequence of the film to the death moments?
The end of the whole movie is flashing in front of you.
The end of days. So what's going to happen to us with our podcast and our 100 hours of recordings?
Should we just like show flashes of the best bits or something?
Or play the times 10 speeds. Yeah.
But they're going to look exactly the same though. Mainly us three in front of the camera. Stan coming in every now and then. Cameo
be more traumatic for people than anything. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do have a special minute lined up next minute for those who would care to join us. Do you want to reveal a little bit about that? No,
it's a big surprise. It's going to be a big event, the final episode.
Nice. So that does wrap up most if not all of the content for this minute. But Brink, did you have something additional that you'd like to add?
Just the Hong Kong one was the only one where they're all meditating on the floor, which I thought was pretty cool, because they even had India ones and they're not doing that. So I'm not going to the Hong Kong Centre now then.
You got to get your practice in before you do. You're sitting so stoically.
And I think it's a commemoration. That's probably one of the best shots, I think, in all those, because it's the commemoration service, I think. So everyone's got their long stem rose ready to place at Guruji's altar with the stem facing away from Guruji picture. The instructions are very specific, and everyone has laid them out perfectly in this image. It's quite cool. Good
spot on that. And they're playing the musical instrument. Priyank, what's the musical instrument?
Harmonium, that one.
Is it the harmonium there?
Yeah, on the right. Yeah,
that is. Is that what it is? Okay, they're playing the harmonium. So they have all the setup. Just look very organized, isn't it? Super good to see. All of these images of our friends and family, SRF family all around the world. Very inspiring. My favorite minute and a half, I suppose this is, that we covered in this particular minute. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Stanley, thank you so much for being with us today. And thank you for listening and watching, everybody. See you in the next minute. Jai Guru.
Thank you. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru. Jai Ma.
Sure.